I started off as a Royal Canadian Air Cadet in Cornwall, Ontario, at the ripe age of 13 years of age. At that age, it was my passion to be in the military. And so as soon as my birthday had passed and I had the opportunity, I joined the Air Cadets, and I served in the Air Cadets in Cornwall until 1976, when I turned 18 years of age, at which point I joined the reserve component that teaches the cadets, the cadet instructors list, and stayed as an active adult officer volunteer in the Armed Forces Reserve until 1979. It was in 1979, when I was 21-ish years of age, that I fulfilled my lifelong dream at that point to join the Royal Canadian Air Force as a regular force officer. Going through officer candidate school in Chilliwack in 1979, which is the formation school and the selection school for the armed forces, I was top candidate of a serial of 300. And that was because everything that was being taught to me, I had already learned through my time as a cadet and as a reserve officer. So nothing was unfamiliar. The military lifestyle, the rigors and the challenges of being in the military, the sacrifices, were all not foreign to me. They were absolutely part of what I would believe is my psyche. They were so natural that I just didn't break a sweat going through officer candidate school. I loved every minute of it. So when I joined the regular force, while I had an inkling that being gay was a problem, and I was just starting to really come out at that time, it didn't bother me, because I thought I have a track record which shows that I can keep my private life private and my military life fulfilled, and nothing would be wrong. Unfortunately, I was terribly wrong. The process that the SIU, the Special Investigative Units, went with me was they sat me down in a small little room with literally looked like eggshell cartons on the walls. And it had the proverbial looking of an interrogation room. It was a room with a very small room, two people sitting at a desk, the two sergeants, myself on the other side. I'm the only one in uniform, a light hanging from a cord, and this big file folder on their desk, clearly marked secret. And they started asking me some benign questions. And, you know, how old are you? Where were you born? What is your older brother's name? The kind of questions you would think you would ask in a investigation for checking backgrounds and so forth. And then all of a sudden, out of the nowhere, within, I think, the first 15 minutes of that interview, they pulled out a letter, which was an anonymous letter sent to the Department of National Defense saying I was gay. And I looked at this letter and my jaw dropped. The allegations in the letter were monstrous, and I had no idea where this was coming from. And the next thing you know, they are asking me questions after questions for hours about who I knew, where I went, what places did I go to, did I know of this gay hotel or this cruising place, what kind of sex do I like? The questioning became a blur for me, because I think I was still in shock when it was happening. I had no idea. A certain self-defense mechanism kicked in for myself to try and lie my way out of the moment, to try not to reveal to them that I was gay, because clearly that was their intent, to make me say I was gay or to prove somehow that I was gay. So the hideous thing about that moment is if you can think of what it would have been like for me as a 23-year-old person, having the type of interrogations, and I was an officer, these were NCOs, you're not used to being challenged like this by non-commissioned officers. And during the interrogation, they made it clear that under the Official Secrets Act, I was not to talk to anybody. They used a phrase that haunted me for years. They used the phrase, don't even talk to a priest. At that point, I was not out to anybody. My family didn't know I was gay. I barely knew I was gay. And so you had nowhere. The office wasn't a safe place to talk. My family was, I had nowhere to go. So I bottled up. At least 5 to 6 weeks later, as memory recalls, that my boss came in and said I had an interview with a psychiatrist at the National Defence Medical Center in Ottawa. And so I went there, and this doctor, a lieutenant colonel, interviewed me. And he was an extraordinarily good professional. It was the first time since the moment that I had been in the interview with the military policeman from the very first moment until then that I could actually speak to someone about what was going on. And fortunately, this psychiatrist was a consummate professional. He told me, got my trust, and we spoke, and I spoke openly about where I felt my sexuality was, and he was very empathetic. About weeks after that, on the days of my final release date, I was to appear at the National Defence Headquarters Administrative Unit to do the final clearances. The general wasn't there. I was with the Colonel Commandant of the AU. And suddenly the paperwork had changed from a 4C release to a 5D, a compulsory release. In my case, believe it or not, still honorably released. Fortunate, I thought. So the carrot that the armed forces offered me was an honorable release, but compulsory release under 5D. The words being no longer advantageously employable. On the day I was released in Ottawa, they literally paraded me around the administrative unit to the pay sections, and not paraded as in like a criminal, but it was almost clear to everybody as you were walking around, this was a homosexual being kicked out. There was condescension, and you could almost cut the air, it seemed. And they took me to the front door and literally took my pass and closed the door behind me, and I was thrown out on the streets, literally. As a survivor, I went out and found civilian employment very, very quickly. And I prospered. I lucked out. I didn't realize the effect that it was having on me doing this. So the effect that I've only learned in the last 3 years, I'm 64 years of age, I'm only now coming to understand what effect happened as a result of those things that occurred in 1982. I think the citation and the apology and the change in attitude that has been exhibited since the Prime Minister's apology in the House of Commons in 2017 has been an extraordinary catharsis for any of us who went through this period. When the Prime Minister stood up in the House of Commons, I was alone here in my condo in Victoria, watching it live, and I cried like a baby. And it was vindication, I think, for the first time in my life, that I understood that I wasn't a bad person. Bad things had happened to me.